Okay, so the work has begun on the next custom furniture project. This is going to be a cedar chest. You can see here my sketch. Um, it's going to be all solid cedar that I'm going to glue up into panels and then join together with some finger joints along the edges, and then we'll do a key and a lid, etc. So at this point I've got all my wood milled up, and I've got my side panels and clamps here gluing up, and then we'll do the front and back panels and start working on joinery.
So for the joinery, I'm going to do finger joints, and so you see here I've got a dado stack and a miter gauge with an auxiliary fence, and then I'm going to do the for the short sides I'm going to do the finger joints with the dado stack, and then the long sides you'll see here I'm going to use a jigsaw. And so I took the short sides and marked off the mating joints there and used a jigsaw to get it close, and then cleaned up the joints to make everything fit just right with some files, rasps, and chisels. And this technique worked pretty well. Was pretty pleased with the way the joints came out.
Okay, my joinery is coming along on this cedar chest. You can see here I've got the box joints or finger joints along this side. It's a pretty good friction fit, and obviously with glue and a little sawdust filler we'll clean up those joints pretty well. But all in all, it works pretty well. So I did the shorter sections with my dado stack, and then laid out this piece on this piece and marked it with a knife and then a pencil, and then went to town with my my good old jigsaw, and this is what we ended up with. A little cleanup with the chisel and files, and pretty good fit. And like I said, it'll clean up well with glue, sanding, and sawdust.
And so now I'm working my way around the box, doing the finger joints on each side. Again, making sure I've got everything lined up just right to mate properly, and then using the jigsaw to make all my cuts. And that technique worked pretty well for this. Just slow and steady with the jigsaw, clean up anything with a chisel, files, and keep testing the fit until everything is just right. It's a good friction fit.
The finger jointed cedar chest is coming along. Got all my sides jointed properly, and then I've added the dadoed groove for the base. I'm doing a solid cedar base. The customer wanted everything solid, so I've got to consider wood movement in this. So we're going to leave a little room for expansion, contraction, and then I'll cover any possible gaps with some trim on the inside. Sort of an old strategy with these chests. And then I'm just going to ease the edges a little bit with a block plane to get them to fit into the grooves a little bit easier, and so they don't bind up. So there we have it.
And so just doing, like I said, a little chamfer with the block plane around the edges. And now I'm working on chiseling out the area for my lock set. The customer wanted a flush mount lock set, so that means I needed to do a mortise with multiple levels. Just did everything really carefully, marked everything with a knife around the edges, and then slow and steady with just old-fashioned techniques with the chisel, and it came out well.
Okay, so the mortise is all done here for this lock that's going to be on the front of the cabinet, and so I had to sort of do a two-level mortise here for the outside flange, and then for the deeper actual lock set. So fits in there nice, really happy with that. And so we'll just screw it on here and be good to go. Alright, now I got my escutcheon all set here. Made a nice little mortise for it as well. So we're coming along. The cedar chest continues here. Today's the day when we're going to get the glue up going. This will be a pretty complex glue up with all these finger joints and so forth, so I'm just going to try to take it step by step. I think I'm actually going to try to glue the base into the groove on the front first, because that's where I'm going to glue it. I'm going to glue the base into the front and leave the back loose, and just glue this front little bit of the sides, and that way there'll be a little bit of freedom for movement to sort of capture that in the grooves along all the edges, and then we'll worry about the sides and the finger joints and all that.
And with the next video, we'll bring this thing through the home stretch. We'll glue up some pieces for the top, put it all together, and do the finish. So stay tuned for the next one. as we finish this thing out. Thanks. And here we are with part 2 of the custom project, the cedar chest. Here I'm doing the glue up. I'm starting with the dado groove and the base. Putting the glue in. I'm a big fan of Titebond products. I usually use Titebond 3 just because of the additional open time. And now I'm going to put the glue on all the finger joints, on all the surfaces. I want to make sure to get a good joint here. And I just usually use my finger to spread the glue. I don't use any of those brushes or anything. And so I'll work my way around the box and get it all glued up.
Alright, so everything's glued up with clamps. I've got my parallel clamps and bar clamps. I measured the diagonals of the box to make sure everything's square. And so we'll let it sit in clamps for a while, then I'm going to come back through and counterbore some holes, and then countersink a hole within that for some screws, and that way everything will really hold tight. And then I'll flush cut some dowels I'm going to cut out of cedar. I'm going to do some face grain plugs, and that way they'll blend in pretty good.
And here we're over at the drill press. I've got my plug cutter on the drill press and a scrap of cedar here. I'm going to cut as many holes as I need, and then I'll go over to the bandsaw and separate them. Obviously I'm not going all the way through this piece of wood. I've set my depth stop on the drill press to the appropriate depth. And now time for the drill press. There you can see. So over at the drill press, I've got some blue tape on the face of this board where I did my plug cuts so that all these don't fall off and roll around the table and the floor.
So I got my dowels all ready to go here, and now they just pop right out from the tape. So I did them first on the drill press, obviously, then went to the bandsaw to release them, and I covered it with tape so they wouldn't fall out when I was cutting, and now they're all here on the tape. So I'll glue them into the holes and we'll be good to go. Okay, so the glue up's done. The flush cut dowels are in, and I made a little trim for the base. Here's what I did as far as profile goes. Created just a little notch here on the back so that it would all be up at the right height, and then just chamfered the top, and then just mitered the corners and glued and brad nailed it all together. And then I've sanded everything and used any wood filler where necessary. And I'd say the finger joints with the flush cut face grain dowels worked out pretty good. Joinery looks pretty nice. Alright, so the cedar chest is coming along well here. Got all the trim attached, and base, the lock is in. Added a little bit of molding on the inside here to cover any gaps that might happen when the base might expand and contract. It's all set into a groove, and there's room for it to expand and contract in the groove. And then now I'm working on the lid, and the lid, the buyer wants a sort of a sculpted look on the front edge. So what I did is I took some scraps of plywood and cut them at different angles. I settled on a 35-degree bevel on the table saw, and then I just sort of sketched how I would do this here to get as little bit of waste as possible with, you know, some hand planes and sanding. So this is the sculpted look I'm going to go for. And so I've got my 3 pieces of cedar all glued up here to make sort of a blank, I guess you'd say. I've got it clamped up here well. And then I'll go to the planing and sanding to try to match that rounded look on the top front edge.
Okay, so now I'm using the hand plane here to sort of fair this front edge to get the curve just right. And I've got you can see a template there that I was holding up to it to see how I was doing with all my planing to get it to the right curve all the way through. Pretty good. Now I'm over to the dado stack, and I'm notching the edges of this front part of the lid to hook to the rest of the lid.
Okay, so we're just about done with the cedar chest. Here's what it's looking like right now. came out pretty good. Did the fared a curve on the front. Added a nice little lip here to pick up the lid. Got the key hole escutcheon mortised and the lock set and everything. So the last thing is the customer wanted a box inside the lid that articulates with the lid, moves up and down. So I created a little mock-up here. Just put a simple hinge on some plywood, and so basically I was messing around with these lid stays here just to see if there'd be a way to make this work. And then out of cardboard here, this greenish cardboard piece, got a lot of paint on it, with the blue tape here. Basically that's my mock-up of what the size of the box will be. And as you'll see here, this opens up with the lid. Right, so we'll get that's my mock-up. It gives me my dimensions of my box. So now I'm getting my cedar cut up here. Got my ends and my two sides. Took a little while to play around with this to get the placement of the lid stays correct. Because this box needs to clear this edge, and obviously it can't hit anywhere else, and this metal lid stay that's behind here can't hit here either. So it took a little while to play with where these go, but with my placement just as it's here right now, this can open up and the box stays parallel to the ground, so nothing that's in the box will fall out. So it works pretty good. Not perfect, but should be good. Alright, so I made the box here that will articulate with the lid. And so now it's just a matter of putting everything together. And here's the chest with all the coats of finish. Used a satin poly. Really pleased with how it came out.
And here's a few pictures. You can see there the box, how it articulates with the lid. I was pretty happy with how that came out. And a little close-up of the joinery to see how that all came out, popped with the finish. And one last picture. All done. Hey, thanks for watching. Hope the video has been helpful for you. Feel free to subscribe using the subscribe link. And if you've benefited from the channel and enjoy what you see here, consider donating by using the PayPal link that's on my banner picture on my YouTube channel homepage. I put out a video per week. Hope they're helpful. Anything else I can do, contact me. Thanks a lot.